Gracias por la introducción, placer de estar acá en Uruguay siempre. Y quiero presentarles hoy un trabajo que se llama Global Technology Outlook del 2013. ¿Qué es el Global Technology Outlook? ¿Qué es lo que... what it is? Enseguida me paso al inglés en forma automática y ya van a ver, y a veces puedo volver al Spanglish y tener las conversaciones que sean apropiadas. So what is it? So the Global Technology Outlook is a piece of work that IBM Research and IBM in general produce every year. In fact, this has been going on for about 30 years now, okay? And it's a piece of work that takes a whole year to produce. And it starts by a call to the researchers. We have about 3,000 researchers in IBM, asking them what are the topics that IBM should be looking at going forward. What's the outlook? What are the interesting topics? And we're talking about trends that are about 3 to 10 years into the future. So something that is next year, it's not something we want to do. Something that is way in the future, that's also probably not something that will, if it's futuristic, so far. Back in the early days, we used to call it 10-year outlooks, looking at the future in the next 10 years. But that's the horizon now, 3 to 10 years. So when we ask everybody, 3,000 people, we get every year a lot of input. In fact, I should mention that I was part of the team that produced the Global Technology Outlook in 2003, when I was working in a position I have to work into that. But I thought it would be less interesting for you to see the 2003 Outlook. Better show them the new one that we produced this year. The idea is that we get everybody all the researchers to come forward with the themes, the topics, and we go through a process in which we win them down, fewer and fewer, until we decide what are the most relevant for this year. When we asked them about them, we said, 3 questions that they need to answer. Okay, it's easy to say, well, let's study, I don't know, the stars or something. The questions are, why this topic? Why now? Why is it relevant in this point in time? And why IBM? What's the relevance for IBM? Okay, so we have to be able to say something about this topic. It has to be somewhat related. There may be topics that are outside of the scope. And then we win them down, and people work on it, and we decide on the topics. We start with dozens of topics. We end up with usually 5 to 7 topics a year, which is more or less what we can do, because at the end of the year, we present the Global Technology Outlook to our chairman and the senior vice presidents of the company, and saying this is our view of how the Global Technology Outlook looks this year. And in that process, there is a piece of this, just to be completely transparent, there's a piece of it which is confidential, and I'm not going to show that. That has to do, for example, with how much money we should be investing here and how many people we have there. And things. It's also confidential, but it's also it's not going to be very interesting either. And the idea is, what are the topics that have a potential opportunity to influence our marketplace, the clients that we work on, the enterprises, the industries, and which ones are the ones that have a potential to help us create new businesses. Okay, so a little bit of background of who we are from IBM Research. Now, I used to work in IBM Research. Once in there, it's like being Uruguayo, forever la celeste, right? So I am there still. I cannot deny it. In fact, my email address still is the one from research. So a lot of people think that I still work in research, and I say no. And I used to be. And I say some of my best friends are there, but I'm not there anymore. Now, when I started back 25 years ago, we have very fewer labs. We only have a few labs in the States, 2 labs in the States, 1 in Europe, and 1 in Middle East, and 1 in Tokyo. Now we have 12 labs in 10 countries. Okay, 3 in United States. Some people will say that Texas and California are a different country, but let's consider them part of the United States. Lately, we have added a few labs below the equator in the southern hemisphere. The lab in Brazil is about 3 years old and has 2 locations in São Paulo and Rio. The lab in Australia is also very new. And the last one that just came last year was in Kenya, which is called the Africa Lab. Of course, different labs, different sizes. I mean, Watson started in 1946. Not in the current location now, and not in the number of people that we have now. It has evolved. And naturally, different places, different size, different history, different topics. But one of the things that we try to do in each of these labs is to give each lab some areas to focus on. Okay? So, for example, in our California, we have a lot of work on storage, nanotechnology, big data, and healthcare. Whereas in Brazil, we have a lot of work on natural resources. We work a lot with petroleum companies and minerias, natural resources, water, smarter devices, and human system and events. This is work that we're doing related to the events that are coming up in Brazil, La Copa Mundial, and the Olympic Games. And now we can start. Welcome. Okay? So this is the background. Each of these sites, I'm not going to go through each of them, but they all do different things, and obviously the sun doesn't set on our labs. There's always something going on, and part of the idea is that we cannot work as in the good old days where we could have people in one or two places doing things in isolation and without being in the real world. The world looks very differently from Tokyo or from Kenya than it looks from California. The problems, the whole thing, set of things. And of course, we like to have access to the whirlpool talent that is everywhere that we need to engage, and different perspectives. And so having different perspectives adds to us. And being able to have issues like accessibility coming from here, and healthcare coming from there, and so on and so forth, getting specialization in multiple places. All right? So now we're very proud of our achievements over the years. And I said, 1946 is when we first started the first lab, and it was done part of a university. But we have done things like memory cell, one device memory cell, Fortran, relational databases, speech recognition, things that you may recognize. Deep Blue, you may recognize the machine that beat Kasparov in chess, and so on and so forth. We have now, for the last 20 years, been the company that has generated more U.S. patents as of last year, and I hope this year is still going, and hope we will continue. Leadership in number of patents. That's very important. We want to protect ourselves from whatever other things are doing, but we also, believe in intellectual property. Okay. So now, getting a little bit more closer to the topics, we see, when we look at the world, we see multiple important trends that are happening that are going to help us, that are in a context, right? These are trends that are happening we call them the mega trends, or technology drivers. Okay? And we separated them into four major areas. The first one is growing scale. I'm sure everybody here has a smartphone. I can bet on that, right? At least one, probably. So many of us have many. And you don't have to check that you have it. You probably have it, I know. And people, cannot live without them. But also the number of users are today about 2 billion people have access to the internet, are connected. The number of transactions is growing, the number of computations, the number of things that are happening out in the digital world is growing exponentially. At the same time, there's another trend that is very important. This is an important trend, but it's another trend that is very related and important, which is the lower barrier of entry. It's easier for us to get access to those resources than it was before. There's more Wi-Fi, there's more accessibility, and it's also easier for enterprises or companies to reach out. You happen to have a great idea for something, okay? I can give some personal examples from my family or whatever, but it doesn't matter. You can go out and create an application and put it in the App Store, and if it's great, people will download it, and you are, very successful, right? That's very easy to do. In the days when I started studying, you couldn't do that. In order to get through something to be accessible by the world, it was quite something, right? You have to put them in these floppy disks, and sell them all over the place and so on and so forth. It was much more complicated. So that's another type of lower barrier of entry that we're getting through. Now, as we're growing in scale, we're getting a lot more data, which increases our complexity, okay? Both for data and management, the type of workloads that we have, and we have opportunities to do interactions and discovering all kinds of new insights in the data that is available. The pace in which things are happening, and we were talking about that earlier, is much faster, right? Things are happening. Today, how often do you get your smartphone applications updated, right? They all, you see it all the time, and I have updates and updates and updates. Things keep changing. So we have that what we call minimization of time to value, because if your competitor does something, then you don't have it, and then you are afraid that you may lose, so you have to very quickly react. So keeping pace with that is very critical. So things are happening faster and faster, so it's another important trend. Finally, there's a lot of context, a lot of things that are happening at the same time that provide sometimes a lot of overload, right? We have sensors and devices all over the place that are measuring all kinds of things, and they're collecting information. And who doesn't have too much email, right? And who doesn't have too many things coming in, and too many, further, we have a desire for each of us to have personalized service to some extent, right? I mean, you're going to get some recommendation for something. If it's completely, I'm looking for a restaurant to go to eat. If they give me some, I'm in Montevideo today. If they give me a restaurant in some other place, it's not going to be helpful, right? Where I am, what I'm doing, what type of food I like, the context, the demand for personalization. We are becoming much more sensitive to that. We want things that are just for you, not for somebody abstract that is, the average. And we want it just in time. All of these drivers start coalescing around several themes, technology trends that are going on. Social, our Facebook, LinkedIn, and all of that. The fact that people are sharing a lot of information that they did not used to share before. Mobile, we have presence all over the place. Cloud, the ability to get resources very easily on demand when you need it. So if you have that great idea, and that great idea requires you to get a lot of compute resources, you just put your credit card and you get it in a matter of minutes. And big data and analytics for big data to support it. So those are the technology drivers that are behind what's going on. So when we look at those technology drivers, we start thinking about waves of technology, and we present this to senior management, and we say, look, if we look back in retrospective from the 60s when we started a lot of this work, we used to have the big wave of back office computing. This allowed us to do banking and insurance and a lot of things, right? Healthcare in different ways. And this was back office computing, and this was a major wave, and some of us remember those days very well. Then we move into the client-server arena. This is the days of Windows and other servers going back and forth. In the 80s, then in the 90s, World Wide Web, internet accessibility, commercialization, e-business, and so forth. And we think that now, we are at the cusp of a new era, which doesn't have yet a good name. Some people have invented some names. Somebody call it SMAC, like social, mobile, analytics, cloud, or something like that. But there are different ways of addressing it. And this is the confluence of these forces, the social networks, the mobility, the availability of the cloud, and analytics and big data. Now, none of these trends disappear, right? They continue. We still have back office. The banks are still doing the transactions, and we still expect them to do things right, and our telephone calls and so forth. Client server continues to be used. The web continues to be used. But the impact that they're having on new business and the impact that is not as it's minor relative to the new things, right? That's the sort of the perspective. GTO is, as I was saying, is a collection of topics, right? So here I'm giving you just the last 6 years of GTO. We call it the genetic map, and there's some coding with the colors. And I should say, when we do the GTO and we present it to management, it's a whole day affair. So I hope you are ready to sit here for 6 hours or so, but no. We're not gonna, I'm gonna give you the abbreviated version of the GTO. No, it's not gonna be so far. But each of these topics deserves or is presented for about an hour in some depth. And these are the topics that have been done over the years. And one of the things that we can say, for example, is many of these topics have created a lot of, have had a lot of internal impact. For example, this topic, real world aware, had to do with instrumentation, intelligence, devices, integration, and so forth. And you may have heard about the Smarter Planet, IBM, right? All of this integration and smarter cities and so forth. And this can be traced back to this topic of 2008. And there are many other topics like that that have had a lot of strong impact in what we have been doing in healthcare, in national resource management, impact in different ways in terms of how we react to those topics as a company and start addressing it or engaging with partners and so forth. Okay? Now, as of the 2013, we have 6 topics: mobile first, scalable service ecosystem, and software-defined environments, which are put together as the rapidly evolving infrastructure. And then we have the impacting the future of big data and analytics. That has to do with analytics for multimedia and visual, contextual enterprise, and personalized education. 6 topics, again, when we presented in the whole thing, we have about 40 minutes of introduction, and then each topic about an hour, so the whole, and discussion, so the whole day is dedicated for the senior IBM management. But here, I will spare you that, and we'll go quickly through each of them, and we'll have some time to chat about whichever. Now, I could squeeze these topics in different ways, and I tried to select a few that I thought will be more interesting for you, with a little bit more material than the others. Okay, now here, for each of them, some of the drivers that drive each of those themes. So, for example, software-defined environments is driven by the new creation of a unified control plane with a lot of heterogeneous resources and top-down optimization, whereas, personalized education is a topic which is, quite different, but is driven by the supply gap between the capacity of the world to educate and the demands that are growing, and the opportunity to use analytics in order to improve outcomes. In analogy to other things that we have done earlier in health, and we'll go into some of those details. Okay? Am I in your way? You're okay? ¿Se puede ver? Okay. Okay. So before I go there, and at the end, I'd like to make the topic, I'd like to make a few predictions, right? In science, you have to make some predictions to what you're going to show. And of course, predictions are always a little bit dangerous, right? As we know. So to start, let me share some old predictions that we have done in the past, starting with ourselves. So our chairman, Thomas Watson, the senior, said back in 1943 that he thought that there will only be a market for about 5 computers, right? So we start with being self-reflective that we also make some predictions that are not so good. Popular Mechanics, 1949, computers will weigh less than 1.5 tons. 1977, talking about DEC, no reason why anybody would want to have a computer at home. This was the founder of DEC, digital computers. Bill Gates saying that you don't need more than 640K memory in your computer. Should be enough. And finally, the famous one that has many parents, prediction is difficult, especially about the future, different versions of it. We like to refer this to Yogi Berra, which is one of the major philosophers in the US. I don't know if you know, he's a baseball player who has a lot of quips like this. But different versions of that have been attributed to Mark Twain and to Niels Bohr and others. So yes, prediction is difficult, but we'll make predictions anyway. All right, this is the first topic, mobility. It's part of the infrastructure. Mobility is pervasive and is very important. And it is different than what we know. We make a distinction between mobility also, which is just mobility. Mobile device is just one more device. You have your laptop, you have your PC, you have something that is mobile. It's just smaller. Just show what you have. That's not true. That's not the case. Okay? It's about changing how you do business because people are constantly connected. This laptop is not connected. My smartphone is connected. I get buzzes from time to time. People react. How often do you check your smartphone every day? A lot. 150, it's the average, that's right. 150 times a day, somebody did the study. But you do it in a different way that you do when you interact with the laptop, right? When you check up an application on your laptop, you spend much more time than when you do it there. So it's a different pattern of interaction. So mobile first is not about also doing mobile. It's not the projection of the backend systems. You have to do things differently. It requires deep understanding of how things are happening and rapid creation of new solutions. Again, you have to upgrade and update your presentations, your applications all the time. We think in 2012 already about 20% of spending goes into mobile. By next year, 2 years from now, the worker population that is mobile will reach 1.3 billion. Majority percentage-wise will be in the US, but in Asia will be a lot of them. And 60% of companies are making internal line of business applications that are accessible to workers on smartphone. And they have to be different because the interaction model is different. Now, this means that mobile is driven different interaction patterns, right? We call this the Omni Channel, which means that whichever pattern that you're using an application, you need to be connected because you're moving from your tablet to your phone to whatever, and you don't want to restart from scratch. There has to be a continuity between them, right? And this means to enable a seamless experience. I can stop something here and continue it there. You need to have what we call context fusion. These applications that we use in smartphones, for example, they are optimized for a single task. You do something with it. You take a picture and post it somewhere. You check your email. You do something which is much more optimized, much more narrow, compared with the old applications we used to have in laptops and PCs where you engage, you enter in and you start doing spreadsheet work and a lot of things that are very much involved. The time of interaction is much, much shorter. It's about average 72 seconds. I have the quotes for the citations from where the studies come, but somebody did a study and say, people use an application in a mobile for about 1 minute and 12 seconds. And also, we have a level of self-composition. People create patterns in which they use, first they check a contact, then they call them or they take a picture and then send it to them and so on and so forth using different applications, right? And this pattern of connectivity comes from individual pattern of users. So it's very important that each application is much more narrowly written, focused, does this thing and moves on. And it has to, of course, boot very quickly. If you're only using 70 seconds, you're not going to spend like we used to do, wait until it loads, okay? The idea here is to some extent to put the user at the center in different ways in the physical world so that they can, it's centered about a seamless experience. Some of the examples of some companies that have been successful in this. Anybody knows Square? Yes? Okay. Use Square? No? Okay. Square allows you to create a payment system in a moment. So I hear that there's some new product that is going to be sold here in Uruguay very soon. And let's assume that I want to be a seller. And I get my phone and I can start receiving money from you very quickly as a point of sale. No upfront costs. In a moment I have the application, I can receive payments. Okay? Growing very rapidly because it's a solution to a problem of how we exchange money, which is very important. Instagram, everybody knows, right? Led to photojournalists, people taking pictures everywhere. Insurance company reducing their cost of doing business by being able to get applications that allow you to, you don't have to send somebody to check the damage, you just show it and that's it. Now, what all of this requires is multiple attributes for these applications. From radical simplification, meaning the application needs to be simple, very short, few interactions. Here's one that who knows and uses BUMP? Only one? Okay, check it out. It's great. I don't use much more business cards anymore. Use BUMP. BUMP allows you to exchange business cards without keeping paper. So it goes directly to your context. It's very helpful. Personalization, right? When it is your device, there are a lot of things that you can do with a lot of data which is local, right? And you have a lot of applications that leverage that, like Pandora and others, right? Leveraging your personal application. Participative behavior, people share information, volunteer information, sometimes too much, but that's a different story. The world as an interface, we can share the environment with, all kinds of services, translation, and so forth. And to me, one of the more important issues is that the cost of entry is much, much lower. Okay, so companies do not need to buy and invest all the capital and get all the human resources and lawyers and this and that. Why? Because you can just go to the cloud and get some services with a standard contract, with a basic freemium pricing model. You get more as you need, and you can get going very, very quickly. So that's a very important trend. The growth of mobile is creating all kinds of new patterns that are very important. We talk about systems of engagement and systems of record, right? System of record are the typical systems that we have where we have, banking, credit cards, and, all of these things that health records and so forth that, you need to keep very safe and so on. System of engagements are the systems in which you engage with people and get, so a lot of the action is happening in the new systems of engagements. But in reality, you cannot divorce them from the systems of record. You have to have access to information, and you have to have a security that goes end-to-end across them. So there are new such challenges that we have dealing with them and providing new experiences that require real-time updates, that require services that are cloud-based in order to be delivered properly, that require proper orchestration, software as a services, and so forth. Okay, this is the summary of the first topic, and this is the, do we have any executives here? No? Okay, good. So this is the executive summary. This is what we, here's the one page, tells it all. There's a lot of growth in smartphone adoption, applications, and services. They are transforming the landscape of business. There's a huge opportunity to transform the business, if you involve it as a transformation process, not just as one more channel. And there are a lot of challenges because we need novel blend of software services and services to achieve differentiation across the systems and services. And here, we sort of detail a little bit more each of those, what it means. Okay, so this is the first topic. Again, we can spend an hour describing it in full, but I gave you just a flavor before I move to topic number 2. And time is short, so I'm going to have to run through them. Topic number 2 is about services. It's called scalable services ecosystems. And the observation is that we see a lot of services being externalized by companies to enable others to use them. Okay? We see now in order of 80 billion, this is a year old now, probably 100 billion now, API invocations per day. And these are being registered in programmable web over 100,000. So we see the incredible growth, projected 300,000 APIs by 2020, and they cover a lot of different areas, from finance to mapping, shopping, government, telco, and so forth. We can see here a little bit of the analogies. So this is these APIs, the old days versus the new days, right? Integrated business functions came in package applications. Now we're moving at service delivery. Custom development, now composable with small compositions. long-running projects, very short innovation cycle, very quick updates. This is how it's changing. And this is analogous to what's happening between dedicated IT and cloud. So there's analogy in how those services are changing the landscape. To give you an example, telcos are opening up their core payments and other systems to enable people to do payments. Which you don't have a credit card, you can pay with your phone, right? That kind of environment. That means they have a back office that allows payments. They have records. They have and they have a customer with a phone. They want to allow other people to sell things and use their payment system, and obviously they get a slice of that transaction. And different such services are becoming more and more popular, and that's changing the infrastructure. Again, the summary is a new economy of those services is emerging. We want to enable our clients to leverage this. And the challenge is that a lot of this requires new business models, new interactions, new contracts between providers and suppliers of such services. The third topic, and again, I'm driving a little bit short on time, so I'll accelerate a little bit, is software-defined environment. Okay, here I go straight. Okay, I could even skip this topic for lack of time, but essentially it's about improving cloud services to meet more efficiency and resiliency requirements for purpose-built workloads. So this is the evolution of cloud. And what it's saying is that cloud adoption is accelerating. I'm all familiar with cloud, I assume. Yes? No? Right? It's a huge opportunity to lead in that area, but we have to build the ecosystems, and we need to do a lot of things in order to drive that infrastructure. So this is the end of the first part, which is the infrastructure as it's evolving. The next part is the applications part that is being driven by that. The first topic is multimedia and visual analytics. So what's going on in multimedia? So the biggest data wave, the biggest growth in data is coming from multimedia. If we look at the levels of data, we see structured data staying more or less stable with not so much growth, text growing, audio even more, images and video, creating a huge amount of data. And this is a logarithmic scale, right? So as we grow this area, we see that the expressiveness, of course, a picture is worth 1,000 words, and a video, who knows, right? Sophistication of analysis is required. It's probably much easier to understand. It's very easy to understand text, much easier to understand the video, what it means for an automated system. And the computational needs, the more complex the data type, the more computational needs you have. How much this is growing? I think this comes from YouTube. Every minute, some 72 hours of video are being uploaded. We have wide area imagery from all kinds of devices up in the air, creating a lot of data. We have video views, and we have a lot of people taking camera phones and using them. We have in the healthcare industry a lot of images coming up, and we have a lot of cameras all over the world creating, for safety reasons, a lot of data. So we have a lot of data, so what do we do about it? Well, it depends on what industries. There may be different ways of leveraging and taking advantage of it. I'll give one or two examples. Transportation, the idea is to ensure safety. So you have, things are happening in subways, whatever. You want to detect suspicious activities for security. You want to be able to do it in real time. I mean, what happened yesterday, nobody cares. It's too late. Oil and gas visualization in order to leverage better optimization of the usage of the fields and finding the right places where to drill. In healthcare, evidence-based medicine to support personalized treatment using visualizations, insurance video-based appraisals, and this is the summary of this topic. Most of the data generated today is multimedia, the volume of it, right? So we have a lot of demand for interpreting this multimedia in some way of visual analytics, okay? There's a huge opportunity to expand and provide value and insights from that multimedia analytics, but this is hard work. okay? And this is, if you're looking for technical challenges, interpreting, understanding these domains requires a lot of insight, a lot of mathematics, a lot of different things. You know, it's not easy to read a video camera and in real time recognize that there is a threat, that somebody's coming with a bag that shouldn't be coming and doing something that shouldn't be doing, and so forth. And computationally, this is very intensive, so it requires a lot of computation, so you have to do it quickly, and you have to do it fast, and you have to do it right there. And the aggregation of that information has implications for public safety. It has also implications for the privacy of the data and so forth. So you have to be aware of that, how you're going to handle all of that data. So that's another dimension. So this is the fourth topic out of 6. And now we'll move to topic number 5, which is the contextual enterprise. Context is something that we've been having for a long time. You know, there's always been some context we have, but used to be very much embedded in the applications. So you will do some application that does something, and it has very well-defined context in which, you know, the relations that are valid. As things have progressed, we have a lot more context into which do computations. And we'll look at some examples of that. People share a lot of information from the social perspective, what their intentions are. And if you share information and you're looking for something, and this could be useful to use, and that provides some context. We can use context. We were talking earlier on about applications that are predicting where there will be crime. Okay, so that you can, where's the highest probability there will be a new crime scene. That has to do a lot of the context, right? So you know that if it's raining, for example, a lot of criminals don't like to go out, and you have different possibilities. These are the context factors that you have to take into account. If it's Friday and it's payday, you have a lot more crime, because criminals happen to know, the friends of somebody else's money, that people are hanging around with cash on Friday, or whatever the payday is. And so on and so forth, right? Now, there are different ways of attach this. For example, I don't know if you're familiar with the Watson system that won Jeopardy, the questions and answer program, that has a huge amount of contextual information, and it has to do with semantics and natural language. So this provides guidance that supports mass amounts of contextual information. So we're moving towards it. This is a big trend, and it's going to play a lot. Now, when we look at this topic in general, what happened was we made this, talking back to the beginning, we said we called for topics in research for what will be the topics. And a lot of threads came together, and they have something in common, and it has something in common. And there were very different projects going on. And what somebody, a colleague of mine, figured out, this is all about context. It's about the context of computing. So depending on the context of the context, it relates to different fields, but it all comes together under different types of customer value based on the context. So if you have a good context, for example, merchants know about what you have been doing. If you go to a supermarket and you buy regularly, they will know what your patterns of buying, and they could send you coupons, and they will do something about your interactions with that company. But credit cards have much more information about your patterns across multiple things, because you often use the same credit card. In fact, they started creating a lot of mining information to detect fraud. That's the thing that they really wanted to avoid. They wanted not to pay for fraud. But by doing that, they also are able to create a lot of context that realizes that if I am in Uruguay today, that's okay, because I've been here before, and there is some context, and this is not. Whereas the first time that I was in a new country, they blocked my card, and I couldn't use it anymore, because they say there's no way that this guy could be there. You get these phone calls sometimes from the credit card companies, saying there's some fraudulent, and they have been getting much better over time. It used to be that there were a lot of false cases, false positives, but now they're much more accurate. At the same time, they're much more able to help you in finding, local merchants and so forth. Now, of course, this has a lot of privacy implications and so forth, but your credit card is your credit card, right? And it's a private company. They don't have the power to put you in jail because of that. It's different than when the government knows about this, which is another story. Personal finance, it's another area where a context is very important. If you have, each person will be at a different point in their lives, different financial goals, and not every financial product fits every person, and it's possible by understanding the context of what you're doing, personalize financial products for you, and we have been seeing that custodial banking and many other examples. So what happens with all that context? So we have, on the one hand, we have privacy regulation. As I said, this is very important, and there are privacy laws in many places emerging, in some places already existing, regulatory activity that requires a lot of context understanding and being able, obviously, these are laws that are passed by countries. These countries can put you in jail, so you need to take care of those laws, right? Some of them are very complex. For example, in the European Union, they're passing some regulation, considering some regulations that provide an individual the right to have their data deleted. Now, that's complex. How do you do that, right, when data is all over the place? Now, there are, of course, also personal expectations, right? When, that I am my age, gender, and ethnicity, it's very obvious. People don't believe that I'm a teenager. They will sell me things and so forth. That's okay. Don't have a lot of expectation of privacy. But my credit card number, you shouldn't know my credit card number only, right? My driver's license, my phone number, and I'm always surprised when I come to Latin America, and not so much in Uruguay, but in other countries. They ask a lot of information. I check into a hotel, they want to know where you work, what's your phone number, what's this, what's that. And I say, why do you need to know all of these things? I mean, look at my phone number. Why do you need to know that? I mean, I'm checking into a hotel, just, or buying something. Then there are issues of compliance. Healthcare, for example, has a lot of regulations on that. In the United States, HIPAA, health information is private, and there are different considerations of privacy. I would like my doctor to know about me certain things that they need to know because they need to take care of my treatment. I would like my health insurance company to know about certain things because they need to pay for this and I don't want to pay. But I don't want them to have exactly the same information. There are things that the doctor needs to know, there are things that they need to know, right? There are financial regulations that have to do with all kinds of things that also need to be complied. Security, we want to keep the data safe, and competitiveness. So keeping context requires a lot of effort to do it right. So we have a lot of models and a lot of questions that need to be addressed. So for example, you're keeping this data, how and where was that data used? Who modified the data? Who owns this data? Can I use it, or am I in violation of some rule? Policies that are applicable. What terms and conditions govern the usage? Can I use this piece of data for this reason or not? Okay, so I'm thinking about, we're talking with a bank and we have certain information, not name exactly the details, but certain information is available for the mortgage application, but should not be shared with the credit card. And these are laws that govern that need to comply with. How do I demonstrate that I am in compliance with those rules? I have all of this data, it's all in my bank, but the loan officer can see certain things, somebody else can see certain things. How do I show and monitor access? How do I prove that somebody that shouldn't be looking at this data is not doing so? Discovery of the data, what does it contain, what's the value, and so forth. So we have a lot of insight creation systems that pick up this data and create high-value data using multiple technologies. So this is there's a lot of research going on here that requires a lot of work. This is complex. Some of the examples that the complex research issues that are required are divided into the 4 major areas. Gather the information, connect the information, connecting the dots, reasoning about it, finding hidden implications, and then composing what needs to be done. And we look at it as a continuous, right? We have data coming in of all types, that needs to be gathered. Some of it is relational, some of it not. Needs to be connected so we can build a context. Needs to be reasoned about. Decisions needs to be made about it, and needs to be adapted over time based on policies and rules. And there are feedback loops that come into that. So we need support for that, and that's a major issue that is going to be pervasive across our systems. And this is the summary. We are shifting towards what we call context-centered computing that transforms how enterprises will work. It's a lot of opportunity in this area to lead, but there are a lot of challenges, a lot of issues that require a lot of attention to make sure that they work properly. And the last topic, and I thought it would be interesting in a university, personalized education. And this topic came to us, or was proposed by multiple observations about, in particular, the surge in demand of the demand for higher-level education. The GER is the gross enrollment ratio, right? It's the total enrollment in a particular level of education as a percentage of the eligible population based on age. So what percentage we have. So in China, between 26, about 30% today. In India, about 20%, okay? And growing to above 40% by 2020, above 30%, okay? Those numbers are huge, are growing very, very fast. A lot of students, from China, 340,000 people pursuing studies overseas in 2011. There are, in India, about 45 million people in 10th grade. It's going to it has a huge amount of demand. For example, in India, there are now about 350 universities. The expectation is that by 2020, they will need 800 universities. How do you go from 350 universities to 800 universities to support this capacity? So something is not going to give. And those kids, they are now in school and in high school, and they have been studying, and their parents have told them that the secret for success is education, and they got it. And they want to get it. They want to go and be educated. And how are we going to enable that? In Brazil, for example, we have now 17% in 2012, going to 33% by 2020. So it's a little, between India and China. Now, one of the things that Brazil has been doing is sending a lot of people overseas to study. That's one of the things they can do, but then it comes with all kinds of other problems. I guess not many places where they can study in Portuguese, right? Now, worldwide, the world spends about 5.6% of GDP in education. Other places, different places spend more or less. This is a little bit of an analysis. But the expectation is the total is going to increase significantly. So we have a huge demand. A lot of people want to be educated. So being in education is a good business. So those who would like to think about that, there's going to be a lot of demand. But, of course, there are a lot of problems. And, okay, here's the population of 18 to 22-year-olds. This is the difficult crowd that wants to be in third. And this is, we're talking about here about tertiary education, right? So what are we going to do about it? So one of the solutions or one of the approaches is to do massive open online courses, or MOOCs. And I was glad to hear today that Port has been working or done one for high school, which is, here we're talking about college, okay? So the number of students has been growing very much in MOOC worldwide, and we have a lot of investment going on, and we have multiple companies that are working on that are providing, services and so forth. One example, Coursera has 74% of their students are outside the U.S. And these are for-profit companies. They make money out of education. So the summary of numbers here is that we have 8 million plus learners in about 20 countries and 800 institutions. So a lot of work is going on in this area to address that gap. Okay? So this is a major need. Now, There are all kinds of questions about how technology works for this and what is the role and so on and so forth. But something has to give. I mean, those people need education, they demand it, and we need to provide it. So we better figure out a way to do it properly. Now, one of the problems that we have is that education as an area of labor is very inefficient. Okay, this is a study from the US, and you can see that education is one of the least, the areas in which there has been less productivity growth. Okay, so for example, if you look at computers, there has been a huge amount of growth, here between 2000 and 2008 on productivity. Same people produce more, right? In information, manufacturing, real estate, same amount of people keep producing more. In education, has not been the case. The productivity of the teachers and so forth has not been going up, actually has been going down. So that's a problem because we have more demand and less productivity. So again, something needs to give. Now, this has, here we're looking at some improvement potentials because of the inefficiency, right? So there are some environments in which they are already very well are using technology and therefore are able to get a lot of efficiency and have been improving. Education is one of those, together with healthcare, where there's a huge opportunity to do improvements. Okay, that's what this means, right? I mean, we have been using technology to make things more efficient, but this is the one that there's a huge opportunity to do so. And part of that gap is creating a lot of demand and a lot of investment and a lot of money is going to there. Now, this is not just about education at a tertiary level. We consider this for the whole, what happens from people to study, to work, and continue education forever, right? I mean, we live in a knowledge society. We need to continue to be trained. We were just talking with some friend of us who is, I guess he's in his 60s and was just taking a course, a remote course for, since a long time. So there's a lot of demand for such continuing learning. Now, we have a huge gap in the talent management, and that is reflected in several statistics here. For example, in Egypt, there's more than 1.5 million graduates, people who have graduated, went to school, did the job and graduated, and they're unemployed. And at the same time, there are about 600,000 openings that they cannot fill. Okay? Now, what did they study? I'm not sure, and I'm not going to go into the problems of their education system. But something is not right there in different places. In India, there was a study about the gap in which what it means for companies to train people as they come out of supposedly being educated or skilled, and how long they need to invest in order to bring them up to the base level, which is what they expected them to be, up to 14 6-week training, just to bring them back to the basic level where they expected them to be at hiring compared with other countries. Worldwide, if you look at that, there's a huge amount of people that are not employed. And at the same time, there are a lot of vacancies. I mean, we have opportunities. There are a lot of jobs that we don't even advertise because we know that there's nobody available that to fill them, right? And when we have the capacity, you get somebody hired, and it's positive cycle, right? It starts, you need one person, then the project grows, you need more. That kind of level is not happening. So we have a lot of potential and this education gap. So we look at this problem and we said, somehow this problem has some similarities with the healthcare business. Okay, healthcare, like education, is also something that we would like to have. Everybody wants it. But we have been doing it for a long time, and we are not very efficient about it. So if we look at health, we used to be that we have a lot of practices that were evidence poor. We just thought that this could be good for you, just do it. We have one-size-fits-all care. You have a problem, this is your solution. We have fee-for-service. You come to the doctor, you get paid. The doctor gets paid for what they did. You had a lot of inefficient processes, a lot of low service quality, a lot of complaints. And I'm talking here about worldwide. I don't want to get particularly in the health situation in a particular country, in Uruguay or anywhere else. We believe that we have been moving towards a more smarter healthcare. In that environment, we use longitudinal data-driven evidence-based practice, which means that we're not just going to give you a prescription that is the same for everybody, but we'll take into account your age and a lot of factors that have to do, that put you in a group, that we have the analytics and the data of all of the people who have gone through that, and we know that for your type of treatment, this is better than that. And that will constantly improve the results. The idea is that we're going to be patient-centric, personalized treatment. It's going to be based on you and your conditions, because you have, your DNA and your environment and whatever it is that where you grew in that is relevant for you. And the remuneration and the incentives for the providers will not be based on what they do, but rather of the outcomes, okay? Because else you always have the motivation. That's something very critical in the U.S. You always, I don't know if it's here, but if you go into the U.S., the doctor, they want to do this, and that. And you say, why not? I don't pay, the insurance pay, right? So let's do it, just in case. And that's how you end up with the most expensive health system in the world, because there's no motivation. They get incented to do more and more and more. And you have a hospital, and they get incented to fill the beds, not to have, the results that are being measured is not more health. It's just how much they have delivered services. Similarly, in the education business, we can look at curriculums that are very much based on no evidence of what their results that they're obtaining. And we would like to move to outcome-driven curriculums that showcase, that demonstrate that the student has learned, not that we just passed him to the next grade, but they have learned something, and show the outcome. Resource-driven education, today, the government or whoever allocates resources to the schools, we want to move to a modeling which is learner-centric. It's personalized. Some people need a lot of attention, some people need less, some people learn better in this way, some people learn better that way. Segmented learning today, you just go into a place and, we were talking about that, 90% of the people in class are tuned out. I don't know how many of you are tuned out. This is not a class. This is, you volunteer to come here, but when you are forced people to be in class because they have to, because school is mandatory, how many of them are really interacting with the teacher? How many are really engaged? How really are really understanding? And therefore, we have a lot of inefficiencies. We think that technology can help, and can help in what we call lifelong talent management, which is engaging with you, personalizing your learning, helping you continue to grow and grow your skills over time. So we have a way in which we have a lot of data sources. We have longitudinal information on test scores, attendance, what courses you have taken, e-learning, collaboration, and so forth. And we think that using application analytics, predictive and prescriptive, we can move to more learning efficiency. We can move to efficient management of the populations, in particular populations that are at risk. Okay? Oftentimes we get in situations, for example, just anecdotally, in which you have school systems that have a problem of people leaving, dropouts, don't finish in school. And so they say, well, we need to stop that. Okay, so now everybody stop the dropouts. And you can stop the dropout by chaining people and forcing them to go to school, but that's not going to solve the real problem, right? So what are the real, how do you manage? How do you know that somebody is at risk of dropping out? How do you address, and why this person? How can we best address them? And finally, we get into prescriptive analytics, in which we can personalize learning path to, increase the time graduation, reduce cost, and increase employability, so that those people will not be just graduated, which is what schools often means. Number of graduates is not necessarily the best measure, but how many are satisfied with what they have done. And one way to measure that is that they are employed and they're having productive lives. So we have done this in many places, and this is just 4 examples in places where we have been working with different institutions, different places in the world, and providing some reduction on student dropouts. who is going to drop out, tracking lifelong learning and doing other such improvements. So this is a starting point. Now, when we look at this problem, clearly there are different constituencies which have different priorities, different things that they are interested in doing. The students, or the patients in this case, right, they want to find the best program, they want to find better jobs, they want to get help in the classes, they want to learn. We want to hope students, are motivated consumers, that they want to spend their time productively. The academic institutions have motivations to prevent students from failing, to reduce their costs and improve their graduation rates and the results of employment of their students. The states, they want to monitor, the money that they spend, that is being used efficiently. Corporations and employers, they want to have and target jobs that will be suitable for the schools and the candidates and influence how the curriculums are being made and ensure that their workers continue to be effectively learning over their lifetime. Governments want to reduce all the problems that come with dropouts, right? The delinquency, crime, and so on, improve social welfare. And the providers of these technologies, they want to, help monitor and assist the students online, and for the most part, they are profit-seeking companies that want to provide a service that will be helpful. So this is the summary of the last topic. Education industry is at the brink of a fundamental change based on IT enablement. There's a huge opportunity to personalize scale learning for better outcomes and talent management, and there's a huge challenge on integration of management and analytic solutions, and certainly any such social environment like health and education requires participation of a lot of constituencies that need to be brought together, so I'm not minimizing that problem. So at the beginning I said I was going to do a few predictions based on this, so a summary, the future of IT based on these 6 topics. So number 1 is that we're moving to mobility, mobile computing, and that's going to drive a lot of business innovation through mobile devices. The second one is that we have open APIs that are going to encourage experimentation and collaborative development, helping constitute and bring together different business models by easily connecting such services into a service ecosystem. That will have significant improvements in cloud computing, that this is going to move to what we call a software-defined environment that is in a control plane, that we're going to have a lot of much better semantic understanding of multimedia analytics, providing much more value and much more visual analytics that change the way that users gain access to data. That we're moving to what we call the contextual enterprise. All that context is going to be very important, and context-centric information system that support personalized services with all the caveats of privacy, security, and so forth for all that context. And usually that context is much larger than what you need at any particular point in time to compute. And finally, that the large demand for quality education and these MOOCs, the massive open online courses, will drive new business models that will drive using predictive analytics and prescriptive analytics that will improve the educational outcomes, which is our goal. And with that, I'll close now the presentation on the Global Technology Outlook of 2013. And if you have any questions or preguntas en español, this will be the time. And I know I've been running a little bit with the time.
En los últimos años ha habido mucha discusión en la literatura sobre que las grandes corporaciones como IBM ya no encuentran tan eficiente que la investigación se haga solo en sus laboratorios, sino que ahora hacen más concursos y compran empresas con propiedad intelectual propia y buscan el Open R&D. ¿En IBM ha habido un proceso de este tipo también?
Sin duda. Sin duda ese es un problema para los IBMistas que están acá, que cada semana compramos otra compañía. Claramente, o sea, se puede decir que históricamente, viéndolo en forma cínica, teníamos una sensación, lo que se llama el not invented here syndrome, ¿no? Que si no fue inventado aquí, no. Pero naturalmente nadie tiene el monopolio de ideas, el monopolio de sabiduría y hacer cosas buenas. Y entonces tenemos que colaborar, no solo en el laboratorio, pero sino tenemos que salir afuera de las paredes del laboratorio. Y eso es parte de las razones por las cuales nos hemos distribuido en el mundo. porque diferentes perspectivas, diferentes visiones, diferente talento que nos pueden ayudar a tener una visión. Y tenemos que, el laboratorio es el mundo. Las cosas hay que hacerlas en todas partes, porque los problemas son diferentes. Estando en el laboratorio solamente dentro de es muy limitante. Y ciertamente hay muchas compañías que han hecho, y eso es una ventaja, porque por lo general cuando adquirimos una compañía que ha tenido resultados positivos. Todas las demás que no funcionaron, no tenemos que... Entonces es una inversión bastante más segura en cierta forma. Y la idea que tenemos es que podemos... O sea, hay compañías que han creado buenas cosas, pero no han sabido o no han sido exitosos todavía en crecer. Y nosotros tenemos una buena forma de hacer crecer. Entonces, si alguien tiene una buena idea pero no sabe cómo reproducirla en el mundo, podemos ayudar de esa forma y a ser más eficientes en colaboración. Y de otra forma dos formas más. Una es colaboración con socios, o sea, tenemos sociedades con muchos y colaboramos con socios que tienen también innovación. Colaboración con el mundo académico y también colaboración con nuestros clientes. A menudo tenemos que participar juntos en resolver los problemas y crear innovación conjunta, sin duda. O sea, no tenemos ese monopolio. O sea, lo que se podía hacer, o se hacía hace mucho tiempo, de hacer investigación en un lugar cerrado y hacer los experimentos y todo junto. Luego salís afuera y el mundo ya cambió. No se puede hacer de esa forma.
¿Cómo están prediciendo a cierto tiempo? Yo imagino que todo va más rápido, ¿no? Es el informe de 2003, lo que habían pensado que tal vez se cumplió.
Sí, sí.
Y ahora el tiempo se está reduciendo. ¿Se da eso? O sea,
en cierta forma sí, sin duda.
Tal vez ya hoy son
sí.
hasta realidad.
Por ejemplo, es interesante, pero el mobility topic, ¿ok? El mobility topic viene de muchas cosas del pasado, no sé si hace falta ahora ir para atrás, pero en el momento que lo estábamos haciendo, nos dimos cuenta que teníamos que empezar a hacer cosas y se ha movido a tal forma que ya existe un marketing y compramos compañías y cambiamos nuestra trayectoria. Muchas cosas se han hecho. Cuando antes uno hacía el tópico y después, un año después, se hacía la evaluación y después al tercer año ya salían cosas. Las cosas van hecho mucho más rápido. En otras son áreas que son más nuevas para nosotros y tenemos que aprender más al respecto. Por decir alguna, educación. Entonces tenemos trabajos en educación y obviamente todos hemos estudiado y tenemos ciertos conocimientos, pero no tenemos el deep expertise en educación. Tenemos que adquirirlo y traer gente. Hemos hecho cosas, por ejemplo, en salud con Watson y necesitábamos más conocimientos médicos. Entonces contratamos médicos a participar en las investigaciones y ayudarnos a entender mejor la problemática, o investigadores en el área de biología y ese tipo de cosas. O sea, siempre estamos en ese sentido avanzando y buscando las áreas en las cuales podemos ser relevantes.
¿Cuál es el grado de avance del desarrollo hoy de Watson vinculado a educación?
Vinculado a educación. Bueno, ha habido recién, hace poco tiempo, ha habido un gran anuncio sobre la apertura de Watson. ¿Lo escucharon al respecto? Que hay... No conozco todos los detalles, pero sé que está abierto y la gente puede ir y usarlo y empezar a hacer todo tipo de cosas con ciertos APIs, etc. Watson ha estado enfocado, o sea, los trabajos que han estado haciendo han sido en salud, más que nada. Pero proyectos muy interesantes, no sé si tienen los conocimientos al respecto, pero casos en los cuales venían médicos y decía, bueno, yo tengo un paciente que tiene A, B y C, D, E, F, y qué es lo que... Y decían, o sea, pero me refiero a médicos de oncología en ciertas áreas en el mejor instituto de Estados Unidos. Y decían, me trató 6 meses lo que la máquina descubrió en 1 minuto. O sea, ese tipo de avances que son realmente asombrosos. Y necesitan todavía mucho trabajo, pero no sé, se ha dedicado a la salud.
Mi pregunta en realidad está relacionada con que en casi todas las cosas que comentó, la conectividad es un hecho. ¿no? O sea, estamos hablando de que hay cada vez más tráfico de datos, hay cada vez más datos para analizar.
La
¿Cómo
explosión
vamos a
de
hacer
datos.
que los datos lleguen de las personas a la cloud? ¿O cómo vamos a hacer para que todo se conecte con todo? ¿No será un cuello de botella eso a futuro? Hoy en día hay más conectividad que antes, pero eso podrá ser.
¿Te referís
un cuello de botella?
a la capacidad?
Sí.
¿No? Como, ciertamente es posible que sea un cuello de botella. ¿Te pregunto?
¿IBM
¿Va a
está
ser?
pensando en eso?
Estamos pensando en ese problema de cuello de botella. Siempre estamos pensando en todos esos problemas, pero a veces son problemas que son para nuestros proveedores de servicios de network y ellos tienen, o sea, no queremos tener monopolio de todos los problemas, ¿verdad? Hay otro problema que a veces, por ejemplo, los pagamentos, ¿no? De cómo vamos, tenemos un grave problema porque ahora no tenemos un buen sistema. En un momento no teníamos, ahora ya lo tenemos, para que gente pueda pagar productos con tarjeta de crédito, porque estábamos acostumbrados a órdenes especiales y se hacía pago de forma más... bueno, se resolvió. Visa y Mastercard vinieron y nos arreglaron. Ya no existe ese problema. O sea, hay gente que se dedica a ese tipo, a áreas específicas y simplemente les damos la oportunidad de tratarlos. Entonces nosotros, en un momento teníamos mucho más, teníamos un network, hace muchos años que lo vendimos y salimos del networking, del problema de ese. Ahora sí hacemos gerencia de networks. Tenemos servicios que están relativos a eso y apoyamos. Pero al punto de capacidad, si vamos a tener, hay ciertos trabajos en sistemas, en hardware que trabajan sobre eso, pero no tengo los conocimientos en este momento de ver qué es lo que están haciendo. Pero siempre hay un cuello de botella. Siempre va a haber alguno. La pregunta es cómo hacemos el balance, cómo movemos las cosas. Siempre van a haber. Bueno, les agradezco la atención, les agradezco el recibimiento. Muchas gracias.